It was the first Sunday of the month in Kpetoe, a small village in Togo. The air was thick with excitement. Thanksgiving Sunday had arrived. Wealthy families pulled up to the local cathedral in sleek cars, their clothes stitched with lace and their perfume lingering in the breeze. But amid the fashion parade came a different figure. Papa Kojo. An old, frail widower, with a face marked by time but eyes filled with gratitude. He had lost his wife a month ago after years of nursing her through illness. Today, he came to thank God for the strength to survive. Dressed in a threadbare shirt and carefully patched trousers, he held in his hands a modest gift, 2 smoked tilapia fish, his Thanksgiving seed. He arrived early, before the choir had finished setting up. As he approached the front pew, an usher blocked him. "Papa, you can't sit here. This section is reserved." Kojo looked puzzled but obeyed quietly, choosing instead to sit near the back. He didn't argue. He just whispered a prayer and waited. When it was time for Thanksgiving, the wealthy were called up first. They came forward with fat goats, gallons of oil, crates of drinks, and cash bundles. The pastor, Reverend Mensah, danced with them gleefully, shouting blessings into the microphone. Then, Papa Kojo's name was called, softly. He stepped forward with shaky hands. The room went quiet. Reverend Mensah stared at the 2 fish in his hands, and his face twisted in disgust. "What is this? Are you here to thank God or insult him? 2 dead fish. Is this a shrine?" The congregation chuckled. "Get out of here. Take that nonsense with you. This is not a fishing pot." Kojo's hands trembled. His eyes moistened, but he said nothing. He turned and left slowly as whispers and laughter followed him out. Outside the church, Papa Kojo knelt by the roadside. "God, I came to thank you, not to be cursed," he whispered. He tried to cross the dusty path home, but his legs gave way. A motorcycle horn blared, brakes screeched, and the village froze. Papa Kojo was gone. By evening, the story had spread through Togo and beyond. Old widower dies after being shamed in church. Social media exploded. Radio stations discussed it. Is this God's house or a fashion arena? Some questioned. But Reverend Mensah remained bold. God deserves the best. Not scraps, he said. 3 Sundays later, a stranger walked into the church. He wore an old agbada and leaned on a cane. His name was Chief Yakubu, a Ghanaian businessman worth millions, recently diagnosed with cancer. Unknown to the church, he had come in disguise to find a place where true love lived. He sat in the back. Reverend Mensah frowned. "Who let that ragged man in?" "This is not a homeless shelter," he shouted. Ushers approached. "Sir, please leave before you pollute God's altar." The man walked out quietly. 2 weeks later, breaking news, billionaire donates entire fortune to local orphanage after being rejected by church. The man. Chief Yakubu. Pictures showed Reverend Mensah pointing at him in church. The internet exploded. The church board met. Petitions were signed. Elders spoke out. Old stories surfaced, more humiliations, more pain. Reverend Mensah was removed. His mansion-like personage stood silent. He became a symbol of pride gone wrong. Meanwhile, a young assistant pastor named Kwabena was asked to lead. He had no designer robes or political links, but his heart was pure. He said, God never asked for gold. He asked for a heart. People cried. Wounded members returned. Healing began. One evening, Reverend Mensah walked into the church, not in robes, but in plain clothes. He sat at the back. The people stared. Pastor Kwabena said, "Let him be. We are all sinners in need of grace." After service, Mensah stood before the crowd. "I don't expect forgiveness. I came to confess." He told it all, his pride, greed, and the shame he brought. The room was quiet. Then one old woman stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. "God gives grace to the humble," she said. 6 months later, the church had changed. No more VIP seats. No more flashy offerings. A carved sign stood at the entrance: "God looks at the heart, not the garment," 1 Samuel 16 verse 7. On the altar hung a portrait of Papa Kojo holding 2 fish, with the words, "He gave all he had." He reminded us what worship truly means. Mensah now cleaned the church compound. He washed the floors he once paraded. He helped the poor. He said little. But his life now spoke louder than any sermon. And the people came, not to see gold, but to find God again. News of the transformation in the church spread across villages. People who had lost faith in religious institutions began to visit, curious about what had changed. The new church, led by Pastor Kwabena, was no longer just a place of worship. It became a place of healing for wounded souls. Other churches in the region took notice. A few mocked, calling it the Beggar's Cathedral. But others were inspired. "If God can move in Kpetoe," one pastor from Lome said, "then we must check our own hearts." A wave of reformation slowly began across the land. And at the center of it all, the image of Papa Kojo reminded everyone of the price of pride and the power of humility. During a special service, Pastor Kwabena shared the full story of Papa Kojo's life. He spoke about the man's quiet faith, his devotion to his late wife, and his final gift to God. Many wept. A scholarship fund was created in Kojo's name, aimed at supporting widows and orphan children. The church held a memorial every year, where people were invited to bring humble gifts, no matter how small, and place them at the altar without fear of ridicule. It became the most anticipated service of the year. "This is what church should feel like," many would say. 1 year after his public confession, Reverend Mensah remained in the background, serving faithfully. He never reclaimed the pulpit. But that Sunday, Pastor Kwabena invited him to speak briefly. Mensah walked slowly to the altar, not as a priest, but as a man changed. "I was blind," he said, "but now I see." He told the congregation that true ministry begins with love, not luxury. And as he stepped down, the church stood, not in applause, but in silence and prayer. It was not the sound of celebration, but the sound of restoration. The house of God was finally whole again. Thank you so much for watching this touching story. If this moved you in any way, please don't just leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. If you believe stories like this can inspire change, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us tell more real, emotional stories that matter. Dove. And remember, God doesn't look at the size of our gift, but the state of our heart. Whether rich or poor, we all deserve love, grace, and a place to belong. See you in the next video. Stay blessed.